Hey, welcome back again. Today I got a Doorman IWE delete kit to go on the F-150. So I'll give a brief run over how it works. There's the part number. It's also off Rock Auto. So the way that the system works is you come on the passenger side of the truck here. There's a solenoid, and this puts vacuum to your wheel ends. So you can test it without any tools. You just pull the hoses off here, and this bottom hose that sticks out longer is your supply line from the engine, and then the solenoid will open up in two-wheel drive, and that'll put vacuum to this top hose. And when that happens, that will allow your wheel to spin independent of the axle. You can see the axle is locked into the wheel right now, but it should release when you're in two-wheel drive, and then when you shift into four-wheel drive, the solenoid will lock back up. So you can test that by simply taking your lines here, and if you pull the supply line off of this little fitting, you can put that just like so into your supply to the wheel hubs, and then it should unlock the wheels so they spin independent of the axles. The solenoid on this truck isn't working as well as one of the wheel ends is leaking, so it's not holding vacuum. But if you do that, you should be able to come under the truck, and you have this vacuum hose here, and pull that off. The big hose is the vacuum, and the little one's the vent. You don't have to worry about that. So if you have it in two-wheel drive, you should be able to just put your thumb over it and feel vacuum there. If you don't feel vacuum here, there could be a crack or a hole in one of your lines, or the solenoid isn't working. So that's when you test, that's when you hook it up like this, and that should open up your wheel ends. If that's not working, then you know you either have a bad supply, which is easy to check by hand. So you can pull this back apart. And you can take just this and put it on kind of sideways like so, and then put your thumb here, and you can feel the vacuum when the truck's running in two-wheel drive. That'll tell you if your solenoid's working and if you're getting vacuum, and then you do your checks underneath, and that will tell you if there's any holes or leaks or anything in those hoses going down. But the solenoid isn't working, and one of the coupler end on this wheel on the driver's side isn't working. So I'm just going to go ahead and install these units here. So I already got the truck jacked up. I'll pull the tire off, and then we'll get started. Next step, pull the caliper itself off. There's two bolts holding that in. They're 13 mil, and then there's two bolts on the bracket. Those are 19s. So go ahead and pull those off. Usually these will be tight, so you can see in there. You can take your flat or your little pry bar, put it in against the rotor, and just pry out a little bit. Now we'll just loosen everything up so then you can see there's a bit of play in the caliper. You can pull that off and just hang it with a bungee cord or something. And now we'll also want to pull that vacuum line off the top of the hub. So once you get that bracket off, there's two 18mm bolts, not 19s, I was wrong there. And once you get those bolts out, just put a little pry bar under. That'll slide off. Brake pads are pretty stuck in there, so I'll take those apart and clean them up before I put it back together. And then usually you can just pull the rotor straight off now, but I'll have to beat on it a little bit. It's all rusted solid. Well, after about 5 minutes of the sledgehammer on the back of the rotor, I finally got it off. So if you live in the Rust Belt, a little bit of anti-seize on the flange will make your life a lot easier. Next thing, you want to take this cap off. Use better vice grips. It should wiggle out. So once you get your cap off, there's a 5mm Allen key bolt you'll have to take out for your wheel speed sensor, and then a 13mm nut holding your axle shaft in. So go pull that out now. That just pulls right out of the knuckle. And you want to very carefully pry that sensor out. There. Somehow I got it out in one piece. So just hang that over the caliper. Probably one impact gun. Pull this 13mm off. Then we're going to want to take the tie rod end and the upper ball joint out. So take your cotter pins out. It should be just that easy, but you don't really want to reuse these, so it's always best to replace them. So the tie rod end is a 22mm and the ball joint is a 19. Pull those off. So the top ball joint came loose pretty easily. Normally you just beat on the side here. You don't want to beat on the threads on the bottom because that'll mushroom them up. So tie rod end here. Just take your hammer. You can see it just broke free. And it'll slide right out. So pull the tie rod end loose. Spin this nut right completely off. Push the arm up. Pull your knuckle out. Once you get your knuckle out, you should be able to just work the axle. You can just pull the top out. And you can see here, it's part of the seal. So, you can see why this unit failed. So it's a couple 8mm bolts, 3 of them around it. But I'm guessing you can see those are probably going to break, but I'll do my best to get them out in one piece and go from there. Now let's pull the 3 8mm bolts. Very gentle with them, hopefully they don't break. And there's 3. So once you get those out, you take a pry bar up behind where the vacuum lines go on. And it should just pop right off. I want to make sure that all gets cleaned up nicely. Here's the old unit. See, it's pretty chewed up. You can hear how hard the seal is moving. And if you can get a good view at that, it's all cracked. So it's no surprise that didn't work. You can see the vacuum lines go on the top there, and the Doorman replacements have studs, so you can keep the hoses and everything right there. So now we'll get this one put in. Hopefully don't have any more issues. Right, now we'll take the new part. You'll make sure the studs and the grease fitting are on top. Then it only lines up one way, like that. Put that in. Just a little dab and never sees onto each bolt. You can see how crusty everything is. I don't want to fight with it again. You can see your collar's locked in, so everything's sitting properly. I just tighten her back up. You got the axle cleaned up. Just pop that back in. You can stand the knuckle back up and pop that upper bolt in. Once you get your knuckle, your ball joint tightened, put the tie rod end back in. Push up on that. Now next step, put your wheel speed sensor back in. Usually helps put a little bit of grease on the O-ring so it slides better. Then you're going to want to put your nut back on the end of the axle. These don't torque very tight, so you can just put a pry bar in across a couple of the wheel nuts. And just snug it up. Usually 1/2 inch ratchets snug is pretty good. You want to take some new cotter pins in through your tie rod end. Bend them over so they can't come back out. And one into your ball joint. Now, you should be ready to put your brakes back on. It's not a bad idea to put a little bit of never seize around the flange just to keep it from seizing up like this one was when I took it off. And then I just put a new flex hose on, so I got new calipers, pads, and rotors as well, so throw those on now. can reach in and get our vacuum hoses here. You just stick those back onto the idle studs, and you want to clip it in back along the brake line if you undid any of those.